Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Weather Junkies. I'm Dakota, and I'm here with Tyler.
Yes, good evening. Joining you from the East Coast.
I'm over here on Mountain Time in Fort Collins, Colorado. Um, how are things going?
Everything's going well. We're halfway through the week. Penn State won last weekend, and there's a game this weekend. And the weather out here is just perfect. I mean, today we didn't have a cloud in the sky, and it was that way the day before. And there's a sprinkle or two in the forecast, but it's just an exceptionally quiet and certainly warm pattern that we're in over here. What's it like out there?
Well, it sounds like you're getting some of the weather we just had, but unfortunately, we have a system moving through tomorrow, and it's going to be a pretty ugly few days over here with some rain and snow showers. The high country up here is going to get a foot or two of snow, which I'm sure the ski resorts are happy about. But it was warm most of this week and this weekend, but cooled off dramatically today. Um, well, before we get into the show, if you're listening to this is our first episode, and I thought we'd do a little few introductions. So Tyler, why don't you take that away?
Oh boy, of course. You want me to start first.
Yep.
How long are we talking for introductions? Like what year?
From
What do you,
from your birth.
oh, of course. Um, well, I'll just start out by saying, obviously we became friends at Penn State, so we both went to school at Penn State for our undergraduate degree in meteorology, and currently I am living in Connecticut. That's where I grew up, and that's where I work now. I work for a TV station, and I communicate the weather for a living right now. So that's short and sweet. The short and sweet version of what I'm doing now.
Cool. Yeah. So as Tyler said, we met at Penn State, and same major, meteorology, but I went a little different path, and I'm out here in Fort Collins, Colorado, attending grad school at Colorado State in atmospheric sciences. Right now, I'm in a master's program, probably going to go for my PhD, but not sure yet.
Dr.
And
Smith.
yeah, I'd rather have them call me Dakota. Um, and yeah, so I'm, you know, grad students do. They just look at computers all day and program. So, um,
And I have to say, you have been a strong proponent for something like what we're doing right now. You've been on me for months to do something like this. Some kind of
yeah,
podcast, some kind of weekly weather discussion, rumination, whatever you want to call it. And this is episode one, so we'll see what happens.
I think I was such a strong kind of mover for this because I don't get to talk about the weather at all at where I'm at currently. So I'd really like that opportunity. So I'm glad we're doing this.
Yeah,
Uh,
and we'll see. We'll see how successful it is, and perhaps there'll be guests in the future. Who knows?
yeah, that would be nice. So if you're listening to this right now, thank you for joining us. And let's start the show. So to start off, we'll do this
Cue
week
the
in the
music.
weather. And
No music yet. This is version one.
no music, no graphics. We may have some graphics in the future. Yeah, and we're not really sure on the titles of the segments per se. But normally we'll have kind of a current event type of segment, and then we'll go into our main topic. And this week, our main topic will be the past, present, and future of the Weather Channel. But before we get into that, let's talk about some of the current things that happened either this week or last week. I'm going to start off with Hurricane Patricia. It was quite the storm, Tyler. Did you follow that?
I did. I would say the one thing I'll remember about Patricia is how quickly it strengthened.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
for a storm in the Eastern Pacific, I personally don't usually pay attention to your everyday storm out there,
Right.
tropical storm, Category 1 hurricane. But in the case of Patricia, the storm strengthened an enormous amount in 24 hours. I think I heard someone say, what was it, 100 millibars in 24 hours? I'm not sure on that stat, but of course the term that we use for a coastal storm, bombogenesis, is 24 millibars in 24 hours. So to put that in perspective, the amount of strengthening that went on with Patricia was crazy.
Right. Yeah. It was. I'll give you some times here. At 10 a.m. Central Time. Actually, scratch that. 15 Greenwich Mean Time. That's when the first public advisory was put out for. At that point, it was Tropical Depression 20E. 2 days later, it was a major hurricane. So if you think about that, if that was along an area that was heavily populated or in the U.S., they wouldn't have had a forecast track just 48 hours or 3 days before it made landfall. I think it made landfall between 60 hours of when it formed and when it hit. And that's crazy, right? The National Hurricane Center would be getting a lot of grief right now if something like that happened along the East Coast or along the Gulf Coast.
It is crazy to think about it that way. I didn't really follow too much of the aftermath beyond the first day or two of reports. I know initially after the storm hit, there were no reports of deaths. I don't know if that changed. Are you aware of any?
It did change. It was under 10. The final count was under 10, which is still remarkable since it was a Cat 5 hurricane on landfall.
Yeah, remarkable for a lot of reasons. Category 5 on landfall, and I'm not too familiar with the area, but I think it would be a safe assumption that they don't have the same kind of communication network that we have here.
Yeah.
In the United States, everything from TV stations to social media to even the meteorological side of it. Are you familiar with how that operates down there in that part of Mexico?
I have no idea. No, I have no idea. I know the tropical or the National Hurricane Center, was doing the advisories for it, and I'm assuming that's what
they definitely have jurisdiction there in the Eastern Pacific, and I don't think there's any doubt that El Nino played a major role in the rate of intensification.
Yeah, so I wish I could put up this graphic right now. I have this graphic of sea surface temperatures, and some of the warmest sea surface temperatures in the world right now are in that area where it strengthened so rapidly.
How warm?
Let's see, 32 degrees centigrade. So that's, I don't know, about 90 degrees Fahrenheit. So that's like bathtub.
Yeah. I've never swam in an ocean that's 90 degrees. So
yeah, it's warm. So just a few stats before I move on. It had the lowest pressure ever recorded for a hurricane at 880 millibars. Second closest was Wilma at 882. And go ahead.
So you said lowest pressure for a hurricane, which is accurate, but the
Recorded
asterisk would be hurricanes are only called hurricanes in the vicinity of the United States, Atlantic and Eastern Pacific.
That is a great point. Yes.
And that, obviously for forecasters forecasting Patricia in the area of where it was going to hit, their main goal was safety. But certainly for people looking in, outsiders watching the storm, for example, me in Connecticut, I don't have any role in what's going on in terms of preparation where the storm was hitting. So I was not so much focused on the exact forecast, but I was thinking about how do you characterize the storm? I obviously work in a media environment, and one of the things that I was taught, basically, one of my greatest influences in this regard is probably John Neese. It's not the strongest storm ever. You can't say that.
No, I saw a lot of headlines that said that too.
Whenever you say ever, it's just not right. I don't care what comes before it. And so, but even if you are looking in recorded history, Typhoon Tip, I believe, was in the Western Pacific.
Yep.
Had a lower central pressure. So there's a whole bunch of different things that went on. No doubt, Patricia was very strong, rapidly intensified, was strongest hurricane being in the vicinity of the United States, Eastern Pacific, Atlantic Ocean.
200-mile-per-hour winds, which is also the strongest recorded hurricane sustained winds.
And isn't that, I believe it's the strongest recorded tropical cyclone winds, if I'm not mistaken. So
I'm not sure about that.
Not sure about that, but the whole thing about the recorded history thing is very important. You have to include it, because it seems like things are happening that may not be happening when you don't, or that we've never experienced before, when you don't include that little fact.
I checked the stats there, and Hurricane Patricia has the strongest sustained winds of any tropical cyclone recorded on record.
What was that? 200 miles per hour? Or
it beat out Super Typhoon Haiyan.
And the data, as far as I recall, the data with Haiyan was a little bit sketchy. It was in a tough place to measure. But back to the topic of recorded history and strongest storms and stuff like that, it seems like the best way to get someone to click on an article is to include ever and make it seem like death and destruction is going to happen. For example, I tweeted about this. I was on the way home from work, in a local radio station, the radio presenter, who likely had no meteorological training, said, with dramatic music playing in the background, "Oh my gosh, Hurricane Patricia is 3 times the size of Hurricane Katrina." Which as a meteorologist, I immediately thought to myself, wait a minute, no.
Yeah.
So I tweeted that out. I did get a response from people, and I looked at the satellite pictures, and sure, the satellite pictures of Patricia were impressive, and they were, the cloud shield was huge, but there's so many different implications when you reference Hurricane Katrina, because my opinion is that the average radio listener is going to hear that and say, oh my gosh, the same number of people are going to die, the same amount of storm surge is going to happen, when in reality that didn't happen. So the cloud shield of a storm is one thing, when the real impacts is totally different. So I think it's irresponsible for someone to say that. Are you still with us, Dakota? Looks like Weather Junkie has returned to the call after some minor technical difficulties.
Sorry about that. I hope you could do the one-man show there for a second.
I'm not sure. I know when we lost you. When did you drop out?
I was only gone for 15, 30 seconds.
What was the last thing you heard?
I blanked. I freaked out.
I was talking about the radio show and how they
got that.
So I was saying it was irresponsible to compare it to Katrina, because that makes people think the same number of people are going to die, the same amount of storm surge is going to occur. The satellite picture was impressive, no doubt, but the cloud shield is hardly what matters. And as you know, it's hard to actually tell where the edge of the hurricane is when you have all these different players going into the storm.
Yeah. I mean,
So
yeah, Hurricane Katrina is obviously a different beast. And bringing it back to our topic of the day, which is the Weather Channel, I have this snippet from their. I was watching some of their broadcasts during Patricia, and they have a little sidebar there, a special report, Hurricane Patricia, strongest storm on Earth. Hashtag Patricia. Uh, that to me seems misleading and
I'm
something.
scratching my head. Um,
Yeah,
Strongest storm on Earth?
strongest storm on Earth. Yeah. Um,
So
it's
the headline itself is certainly misleading.
absolutely it's there to grab you, and that's it. There's no real importance to it or context to it.
So you know, oftentimes, oftentimes after a day spent quashing meteorological rumors, sometimes I'll sit down and think, well, how important is it to do that? Or are we just getting in the way of ourselves? Are we spending our time wisely? Is it more important to focus on warning people and all of that? And at the end of the day, I sound like a football coach. Um, at the end of the day, I think it is important to get all of those facts right. And
It
certainly as an outsider, it's very important to classify us as outsiders. For a storm like Patricia, we are by no means on the front line of warning anyone.
right, right.
So we have the time to make sure the facts about the weather details are correct.
At that point, it comes down to communicating science effectively and accurately. Because you, I should say, are broadcast meteorologists as are seen as scientists, and most of them, have the science degrees, and that comes with it. You have to be able to communicate the science and the facts correctly, without any misleading or uh, I don't know. What do you think about that?
I think you're absolutely right. I think it's an exceptionally difficult time to do that for a number of reasons. Social media and the whole adjustment to this new digital world is certainly making it very difficult, which is unfortunate because, as we both agree, the facts are important. It's just so hard to um, put a stop to bad things, to inaccurate things once they get going and circulating on Twitter and Snapchat and Facebook and Instagram. It turns into a disaster.
Right. So this has brought us full circle now, and we're talking about the Weather Channel. So let's get into our topic of the day. Uh, Something we all weather weenies grew up on, and that's the Weather Channel. Uh, you remember the good old days of Local on the Eights and
I
watching it?
do. I watched some of the vintage videos on YouTube. I love the music that they play, especially around the Christmas time and stuff like that.
Oh, it's great. It's great. Someone I looked up to as a kid was Paul Cosin was their winter weather expert.
I am in the same boat. I remember him sitting at a desk with a nice 4x3 rounded TV next to him, and he'd have a map of the Northeast and maybe a pencil or some way to draw on the map, and then they'd take it full, and you'd hear his raspy voice talking
Oh,
about how much snow was going to fall. I love those days.
it was weird. The two people I love the most on that channel, John Neese, Paul Cosin, they had very similar voices. That's just a funny side note. But so where are we now though with the Weather Channel? I feel like
Turbulent times.
I feel like yeah, I feel like a lot of the communities kind of looks at them in a negative light because of their programming. Most I think the biggest thing is their programming right now. People are very upset about their programming, but also some of the things on their website that they're supposedly communicating are not really weather, not really weather at all. More like reality or reality TV.
Certainly, the website is creates a lot of tension in the meteorological community because of all the, frankly, nonsense that goes on the website. Like, for example, how to cure your cough before the flakes start flying, or something even less related to weather.
I got one right now.
What is it?
The world's largest slip and slide is insane, with a link to a video.
So great, Sally from Selinsgrove is going to click on that. But that's not weather. I believe that we should be doing what we're experts in what we're meant to do. I mean, think of a good analogy. Your local car mechanic, he can change the oil, he can rotate the tires, and perhaps business is slow. Should he start washing cars and vacuuming? I don't think so. I mean, that's not what his expertise is, and that's not what he does. I mean, he fixes your car. He doesn't wash it, or he doesn't
right.
put fancy stickers on the back. I mean, that's someone else.
I like that analogy a lot because it really kind of highlights their flaws, that they're trying to do something that they really shouldn't be doing. What about some of their programming? I feel like you could watch maybe not anymore because they've kind of shifted to more weather programming. But at one point, I feel like you could watch the Weather Channel for like a few hours and not see a single bit of weather forecasts, or at least not the main thing. You could probably see it on the on a sidebar or something, on a scrolling bar. But
I'll admit, I really haven't watched a lot of the Weather Channel in
me neither.
many years. But I see what goes on Twitter and people complaining about, like, I don't know what the shows are called, Swamp Dudes or stuff like that. Obviously, when Weather Change History comes to mind, I don't even know if they'll run that. But the whole, as far as I know, the reason they went to that was because the question was, how do you make money, or how do you be successful when the weather's quiet? Or
right, because there's not always something that's going to grab the attention of the public. If it's sunny every day,
And producing those shows is expensive.
Right.
The cheaper alternative is to just have a weather presenter in studio forecasting the weather, and that is actually what they've gone back to in the last month or two.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly a cheaper option, and obviously big news in the last week ago or something. IBM acquisition.
IBM has acquired the technology part of the weather company, which is the umbrella for the Weather Channel, Wonderground. Are there anyone? Is
WSI.
WSI. But they didn't actually acquire the channel, but they acquired the website, and I'm assuming their applications, and Wonderground is a big proponent of them now. And the reason is to use IBM's strength, which is, they can process data really fast. They have huge supercomputers, and they're trying to improve the forecasts and how people get the forecasts. So at a first look, I think it's awesome. I think what they're trying to do is good, but I guess it's kind of a wait and see type of thing. If it even does have a big impact on forecasts.
Yeah, what I would say is, here's what I know about IBM without Wikipediaing the company. When I see the IBM logo, which I think is antiquated,
Mm-hmm.
I think of a old computer that's as, slow as a turtle, um, where you play.
Why does that come to mind?
I Probably because we used to have an old IBM computer a
Oh,
decade
gotcha.
ago,
Yeah.
and I don't. I've certainly seen discussions about their Watson computer.
Yes. Yeah.
Other
Like,
than that, I don't know a whole lot about what IBM does. With that being said, or what they've been doing recently. With that being said, I think this is very exciting to see what happens with this acquisition, because obviously IBM is a technology company, and now that they're going to have weather information, perhaps they can take things to a new level. Um,
I'll read a snippet from their press release. Quote, the deal would extend the reach of IBM's cloud data services capabilities and expand the weather company's business capabilities and consumer reach on a global scale, end quote. So it
on
looks
their
like they're just utilizing IBM's computing power, essentially.
Yeah, they have quite a fancy page that they designed. They have vines on here with like sleep pellets and lightning bolts, and
I saw that.
uh,
That was a cool little video there.
one thing that catches my eye is how they have a couple of icons. One says 3 billion weather forecast reference points, 40 million mobile phones, 50,000 flights per day, 7x the volume of the leading search engine, and fourth most used mobile app in the US. I would assume that's the Weather Channel's app.
Hmm.
Um, so they clearly know what they have, what they've acquired.
Right.
And going down, they have 6 different boxes that say coming soon: insurance, government, energy and utilities, retail, consumer products, media, and entertainment. So no doubt, this looks like it's going to compete with the likes of AccuWeather, Enterprise Solutions. Obviously, that comes to mind because they are a major player
Right.
in the weather enterprise. But there are a lot of smaller companies out there that I'm not as familiar with. But occasionally, you see them flash across on Twitter, or you click on someone's account and it says they work wherever, and you've never heard of it before. So there are a lot of other players out there. So perhaps one impact that this will have is, unfortunately, maybe make business a little bit more difficult for some of the smaller fish in the big pond.
Yeah, I guess that's kind of the downside of something like this. Um, it's interesting you brought up AccuWeather. I have just recently, and I've never seen it before, but just recently I've seen commercials for them on online on like YouTube videos or like an online
Oh,
video.
the Microsoft commercial?
Yeah, and the guy is talking about AccuWeather.
10 billion or 10 million data requests.
Yeah, I had never seen an AccuWeather commercial. I guess it's not an AccuWeather commercial. You said it's a Windows commercial.
It's some kind of Microsoft cloud thing. It is interesting. I think I saw it today.
I'm curious if that guy is just an actor or I'm assuming he
Um,
is.
anyway, so back to the big picture. Certainly, there are big changes occurring in the weather enterprise, and I do think it'll be interesting to see who becomes the leader in what I would call, you know, what would it be? Private sector meteorology. I mean, I don't want to just say forensic meteorology, because that's only one part of it. Obviously, you look at this
Yeah,
website and they want to market their stuff to a whole bunch of different things. Um,
I think private sector. Yeah, that kind of sums it up, wraps it up.
one thing that came to mind was looking at this website. It seems to me that they really understand how they can penetrate certain areas better.
Hmm.
And so, you and I both know a number of people that are in emergency management, and overall we kind of get a sense for what could be done to improve safety in a number of areas, whether it's a concert or a baseball game or a football game.
Yeah,
it seems like this IBM weather company deal is going to really attack some of those areas that haven't been touched as much as they could be.
Well, that sounds
For
that sounds
example,
great.
this media and entertainment area says weather for emergency management for venues, emergency managers using IBM, emergency management software to get precision weather insight for advanced planning and faster response. It just seems to me like the whole package.
Hmm.
And now they have the weather information.
Well, it'll certainly be a something to watch to see if we actually notice, improvements of those type of communications. Because that's really that's a hot button issue. Disseminating the information correctly, especially in severe weather season.
And the other question is, jobs. Are they going to hire more people? Are they going to lay off some people? Staffing levels, simply,
Right.
with this whole combination. And the last part of this is the Weather Channel now, no longer part of the Weather Company. So what happens to the Weather Channel? And a number of people that I've talked to are not very optimistic.
Of its future.
Yes. Part of the reason being the state of the cable business.
Yeah, they've had a few issues with DirecTV.
And people don't want to pay for 300 channels when they only want 6 or 20. And you saw it with ESPN the other week when they laid off people.
Yeah.
The cable pool of potential customers is shrinking, or I should say the number of cable subscribers is shrinking because less people are subscribing to cable. And so when you have less people to get to watch your channel, then you make less money.
And
So
similar to that, they also are experiencing something that they haven't really had to deal with before, and that's competition. You have Weather Nation, based out of Denver, and then you have the AccuWeather channel, which based out of a state college. What do you know what's going on with the AccuWeather channel?
I do not. I really don't know much about it. The only thing that I have noticed is there seems to be more on-camera people
Right.
at AccuWeather now. But I have Dish Network here,
Yeah.
so I am not familiar. I'm honestly not very familiar with the AccuWeather channel, other than I know that it exists and
Right.
that.
Well, that certainly can't help the Weather Channel's ratings, with some competition.
It doesn't help, no. And the other thing is now, the Weather Channel, if you break up the Weather Channel's business into thirds, I believe the top guy at the Weather Channel was interviewed, and he said 2/3 of the business are the digital side, the website, and especially the app.
Right.
1/3 is the TV channel. 10, 20 years ago, it was flipped. It was 2/3 the TV channel, 1/3 digital. Well, now they don't have an app and they don't have a website, or at least going forward.
Hmm.
So what's going to happen? Are they going to have to make their own website and make their own app, or are they still going to somehow use something from IBM? It's a whole mess.
You're painting quite a pessimistic future there.
No doubt it's going to be difficult. Basically you had a company with a whole bunch of legs and now there's only the lone leg being the TV channel is on its own, and it has to somewhat start over in some areas. Again, I'm not too familiar with how they're going to work things out with the app and the website, but those are two crucial pieces.
So we've heard all the dreary and dark things that might be in the future for the Weather Channel. On a bright note, I think the best thing that they've done in a really long time is Weather Geeks. I haven't seen every episode. I have seen a few, and it is wonderful. I think they're catering to the weather weenies out there with this show, and I thoroughly enjoy it. Have you caught any of those?
I really have not. I don't even think I've watched one full Weather Geeks episode, and perhaps I regret that. But I certainly have seeked out episodes online. I was looking for the one where Nice was on. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to find it. But I agree wholeheartedly. I mean, that is a great way for the Weather Enterprise to come together and kind of have a way to discuss things. And I don't know, what would you call it on the Weather Channel's part? A community service?
I think it's more of like a peace offering to all the weather people that were upset with their programming, and they introduced this show that is just, I mean, that's not just for them, but it certainly is kind of catered to people who have an interest beyond just the forecast.
It's almost like a college football program hosting a forum on concussions or something, where everyone comes together and
it's a stretch.
and discusses something for the betterment of everyone.
Yeah, of course it's hosted by Dr. Marshall Shepard, who is, I think, a great host. And I think the cool thing about it is they bring on such a variety of experts and people in different fields and they're not always agreeing with the view that Dr. Shepard has, or a view that the weather community agrees on. Like, for instance, they had Joe Bastardi on just recently, and there's definitely a conflict between those two and how they view climate change. I think it's really cool that they did that. I don't necessarily agree with everything that Joe says or tweets or whatever, but it was cool to see both of them talk about something in kind of a very positive and collaborative setting.
I do think it's great, yeah.
So, what do you think? That was a solid start to our inaugural.
Yeah, do you know what the elapsed time is?
I actually don't.
Yeah, you had to take a break in the middle, so.
For some reason, there's no timer on here, but yeah, for future, I will definitely do that to see where we're at. We're aiming for 30 minutes, half-hour show. But if you're still with us, thank you so much for sticking around. But I think that's going to do it for us. If you want to follow us on Twitter, we are at The Weather Junkies, the WX Junkies. And if you have an email or if you have a question or anything you want to talk about anything you want us to talk about on the show, email us at theweatherjunkies, all spelled out, at gmail.com. Tyler, thanks for a great show.
Yeah, it was a great episode 1, and we look forward to many more to come.
We'll see you next time.